I know what you're thinking. What in the gosh darn is Bits and Bombs? Bits and Bombs is a podcast deep diving into what it takes to do stand-up from a different comedian every episode. Follow new open micer Peter Doms in his journey to be an okay comic.
No, I was actually homeschooled, that's true. I was homeschooled my whole schooling life. I know what you're thinking, how was she socialised? Not well. No, I enjoyed homeschooling, I did. I like to think I had a pretty normal schooling life despite doing it at home, right? Like we still had tests, we went on excursions, we went on camps, which I know sounds culty, it's because it is. No, but camps were fun. Camps were fun. We did normal camp stuff, swimming, archery, blood rituals. Look, first kisses were kind of weird. Now, come on, that's a joke. My parents wouldn't do that. That's what brothers are for. It was fun. I didn't really get expelled. I felt like I came close. Like I did struggle with learning a fair bit, right? Like, especially being at home, me and my brother really butted heads, yeah? And we both have different disorders, which makes it hard, right? Like, I have ADHD, and he has a PhD. Yeah. We're different people. He's out there saving the world. I'm here.
B. Cordez.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
No worries.
This
Thanks
is
for
very
coming
fun.
on. So what was your first gig? When did you start comedy?
Oh man. Well, it all started in the summer of 1994.
Yes.
God, when did I start comedy? I mean, I have always been a performer, and comedy is like something I've always wanted to do. But
actually, so always been a performer. Like when did that start?
It all started in the summer of 1994. Truly though, like I was that kid that was putting on shows in the living room and charging all the relatives 10 cents to come and watch a show they absolutely did not want to see.
Was there anything you stuck to, or was it just that you always like wanted to be on stage?
I definitely wanted to be a performer. I think like, you know, as a kid you want to act and be on the Disney Channel and all that kind of stuff. And I think I enjoyed musicals and things, and truly just like a little star performer child. And I did a lot of, like, where I grew up, we had this like a Stedford that was like called a speech and drama, a Stedford. So weird to think about now. It feels so culty, but it was literally like you entered in different categories and did like a poem or a monologue or something like that, and you could win a trophy. And I would do this every year, and I would enter every single category I could. And I mean, I was pretty good. Like I won a lot of them and stuff like that. And so obviously that was great for my little baby ego. And yeah, just sort of, I guess, went from there, and I just always knew that was kind of a path for me. And then I guess like when I went to uni, I did applied theatre, which was like basically doing theatre and drama, but from more of it had like just the general theatre drama element, and then it also had this applied element, which is basically like using theatre and drama for, I guess, a developmental tool for you know, all kinds of people, like for school, doing like stuff in schools, or we also did stuff with like elderly, people with disabilities. I actually did a stint in a women's prison just for a bit of with one of my tutors, just for what's it called, like a little practical thing, which was really interesting. And I guess from there, that kind of really took me into a place of realizing that I really enjoyed that aspect of it, because I guess that was just something that was kind of like, oh, I'm just doing theatre at uni, and then kind of learning this whole other side through this course as well, that I was like, I actually really, really love that. And then kind of really got into youth work and doing a bit of like theatre directing and writing and stuff like that, and trying my end on the backhand of things. So I guess then that kind of all brought me back to comedy, because I did still like want to perform and I wanted to do that kind of thing. But I'd kind of really moved away from this whole theatre-y side and acting and things like that, because I mean, you know, it comes to the performing arts and you grow up and you just see so much of the like tall poppy syndrome and the egos, and I found there is a lot of that in theatre. It's very pretentious, and that was very disheartening. But I still really enjoyed, again, like that side that I found of it in helping people, and using that kind of talent and that skill to assist just everyday people and people who, you know, actually do want to pursue this as a dream and things like that, which really brought me into youth work, and like artistic youth work and things. So that was kind of like, I guess, where I hold my theatre love and stuff like that, is now kind of in that space. And then, I found my way into comedy, and that was a big moment for me, because one, it was something I'd always wanted to do, but two, now I get like this regular stage time that I was still craving, and in a community that I have found to be really, really supportive and really lovely. So that's, again, started in 1994.
It's really interesting with using the theatre stuff for development, because I did an improv class last year, and for me it was always like to just enhance like what I was already doing with stand up, but everyone else was like social skills and like they were doing it for self-development.
Absolutely.
And I had no idea that those type of things could be used. I was just like, I just want more stage time. Like,
No, it has like these massive effects. And so straight out of uni, I actually started a business with a couple of my other graduates called A School to Stage, which we don't do anymore. It kind of crashed over COVID, and also we're a little bit burnt out. But it was such a great experience we did for about 4 years, where we went into high schools and worked with senior high school students, doing like... So we did devised theatre, so basically where we worked with them and did like a series of exercises and all types of things, and essentially got them to write a show about something that they're interested in. And then we did those shows at like the Powerhouse. We even did one season at QPAC, which was an amazing experience. So that was like really, really cool. And the whole point of it was to go into, you know, work with senior school kids, and basically say to them like, no, you're in control. Like this is your space to create something that you are really passionate about. And it genuinely would take them like 3 weeks to even kind of start getting that idea into their heads, because, you know, they're in the school system and it's so based around, this is what you do and this is what you're learning and this is what you know, should be doing. It was hard for them to kind of grapple with the idea that they're in control and that they actually get to create something that's really meaningful to them. And that was so amazing, because you'd get like, it would always be the kids that resisted so hard about like, you know, drama, why are we doing this is so boring, kind of, you know, those kids. They would always, without fail, be the ones that, you know, after a few weeks, they'd come to me like after a class or something and be like, hey, like I actually wrote this thing. I don't know if you want to read it, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. And it was always like amazing. Like, and you could see this turn in these kids, of these ones that kind of, I guess, were probably quite let down by the school system and what was happening there, to suddenly realizing that they have control over something. And they would find a passion in it. And I still, like now, I mean, this was, when was this? I guess we graduated 2014. So back then. But, you know, now I still have contact with some of these kids. And they're doing just incredible things, and it's very, very humbling to have seen how that impacted their life path. Yeah, and again, these are kids that, you know, probably wouldn't have done something like this or didn't think that they were creative or anything like that. So it's just, yeah, really, really great. And even, you know, just the self-confidence, like you said, and things like that is so important, so important. So I'm very passionate about it. I love it. It's really great, yeah. But, yeah, people can, you know, there's so many benefits to improv and performing, and whether you want to actually get up on a stage or not, just practicing, being silly, honestly.
Yeah, being silly. Yeah.
Being silly. Playing around, being a bit of a kid again. So important. It's so fun. But people feel weird about it.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, I was thinking, like, improv and things like that, it's just like adults playing make pretend. But it's so fucking fun.
Definitely,
like,
yeah.
And yeah, there's something in that, like, I think we're kind of moving, I think it's like an older generation thing, but we're kind of moving away from the whole, like, banishing that childlike wonder kind of thing. Like, I think our generation's like embracing 100%. It a bit more. We're wearing fucking like silly shirts.
Got my booties.
And like nostalgia's a big thing. So everyone's like kind of like buying all like the pop vinyl, like just a bunch of like just. I don't know, we're just embracing the things that we were passionate about as a kid.
So. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We are. I think that's like such a generational thing for us. Like, I mean, I like to say it because I'm about to turn 30, but I feel like with our generation specifically, 30 is like the new 20. You know, we actually took that time in our 20s to figure our shit out and do it. And I think a lot of that came from, just still connecting with being a kid, being silly, realizing that we don't know what the fuck's going on, man. We don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because I was like so worried, like early, like 21 or whatever, like I was stressing about turning 30. Now I'm like 26. I'm like, it's not going to be so bad because a lot of my friends are like 30 or turning 30. And I'm like, it is kind of the new 20. Like, we're all still figuring it out.
Let's go with that anyway.
But, so your first gig.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'd always really admired comedians, and I hadn't even like kind of thought about it as being a path to pursue because it felt so far out from, I don't know, it felt not real, if that makes sense. I'm like, how do people do comedy? That's crazy. Like, what is a comedian? Are they, I don't know. But, basically me and Zach Hadfield, if you know Zach Hadfield, yeah. So we kind of got into comedy together, and when I say that, I mean that we met on Tinder and hung out, and then we were like, hey, we want to do comedy, cool, let's figure that out. And started just hanging out at gigs, started hanging out at Good Chat a whole bunch, and then he took the plunge before me and entered their Brat Pack. And so, which was really cool. And then kind of from there he started a room, at, Back Dock Arts, which was actually the next step in my school to stage journey. Us, a little group that we had, we then opened Back Dock Arts. So we were still very connected, and basically it was after COVID. Like, I think I was like hanging out with, doing all that kind of comedy stuff. And then COVID really hit really bad. Yeah. And that's when we had the big lockdowns and everything. And that was that moment where I was like, okay, like this is the time. Like, it's time for you to do this. It's time for you to write a set. You know, there's nothing else to do. Just man up, just balls up, do it. And I did. And I mean, you know, TikTok was massive. I turned into a bit of a TikTok girly. Got a few little viral little skit things on there as well. So that was kind of a little bit of a boost as well. Like, all right, do it, just do it. And then when everything opened back up again, Zach was basically like, you're on. It's like, you don't have a choice anymore. I'm giving you a spot. You have to do it. You have to do your 5. Which was awesome because, as I said, it was at Back Dock, which was also my venue, so it felt a little bit comfy and a little bit nice. And that was, you know, you just roll through it, just do it, just get out there and say some words, basically. And it was fine. But again, it was mostly friends and people there. But that was really great. That was a really great experience. And also, like, the the people that were on that night, I can barely even remember. I remember Georgina Humphreys was on that, and obviously the sweetest peach in the world. So it's nice to have, you know, lovely people in the green room who will just say hi and talk to you. And also Damien Power was actually on that night, and I was quite literally in the green room just like, you know, shitting my pants. And he came straight up to me and was like, you know, oh, hey, I'm Damien, blah, 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 introduced himself. And that was like, oh, man, I cannot thank him enough. I don't think I ever have. I don't think I'd even know what kind of impact that made for me. Someone like him who I'd never met before and kind of, you know, wouldn't have, I guess, even expected to in that kind of state of mind, being like, oh my God, it's Damien Power. I wouldn't have expected him to come straight up to me in the green room and introduce himself. And yeah, that was really, really nice, because that kind of really put me in that headspace of, oh wow, this is actually a really safe space. Like this is nice. Like I said, coming from that kind of theatre background where I witnessed a lot of that punching down and tall poppy syndrome and just a like toxic atmosphere I didn't appreciate. Yeah, that whole interaction was, really, really, I guess, special in a way to pushing me forward, especially in your first gig. Like, I mean, you know, you gotta, everyone knows that their first gig's gonna be trash, and you just like, you whatever, forget about it, you know what I mean? Like, just get it out of the way. But there's no denying that still is gonna have some kind of impact on where you kind of go from there. So that was great. And again, I just did it. But then I don't know, man, I must have had must have gone all right, because I must have been feeling pretty confident. I just went balls to the wall and actually messaged Jake from Good Chat and was like, hey, I'd love a spot. And he's like, okay. So my second ever gig was at Good Chat on a Wednesday night.
Oh, wow.
I know. I know. Which, like, looking back now, I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't realize the gravity of that situation at all at that time. And I crushed it. It was awesome. That was a really, really great gig. I think, like, you know, I think that's a credit to, we all know that a Good Chat's a banger of a club, and you're going to have a great time there, you know. So I do think that's a big credit to them and the great sort of audience they bring in.
There's still an achievement in making a Wednesday crowd laugh at the same time, because it's also still so very easy to bomb on a Wednesday.
Totally.
So,
and I mean, I was at that point, I was inviting friends. I was at, you know, that new open micer that was like, everyone come to my comedy. So, you know, I had a good support system there, which obviously helped. And also, who was emceeing? Ben Knight was emceeing, who's obviously amazing. And, you know, has that kind of warm, comforting energy about him as well. So I think that really helped. Like, I'm sure he said something like, you know, it's only a second gig kind of situation, which I don't always think is great, but in that situation it definitely was, because I think I got a bit more of that warmness from the crowd. But yeah, like, again, looking back on that being my second gig, I'm like, that's insane. That's crazy. But yeah, it was really good.
So was that like 2020 or 2021? You said
it must have been 2020.
Yeah.
I think it was like late 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So you've only been doing it for like coming up to like 3 years now?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, for some reason I assume you're like 5+ years in.
It feels so much longer. I actually had Beck Charlwood say that when I opened for her Brisbane Comedy. I'm like, where are we? Brisbane Comedy Festival show. She was like, oh, you're going to do a show next year? And I was like, oh God, I don't know. She's like, how long have you been doing comedy? I'm like, 2-3 years. And she's like, oh God, no, don't do it yet. She's like, I thought you were like doing it for ages. I'm like, well, I guess that's a compliment, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, it means that you have that stage presence.
Yeah, like, I suppose. And I guess I get that from, you know, theatre background. I think I did find that actually when I first started comedy, was like, you know, I did do the Brat Pack that year as well. And just, it was very obvious, I guess, in my own body that I did have that kind of leg up, I suppose, on a lot of new people, is that I didn't have to battle with having stage presence.
Yeah.
Because that was something I already knew and in my body and knew how to be on a stage. That's not to say I don't get nervous. I'm very so nervous.
I was actually going to ask about the nerves thing. Like with you, where is like some people like the nerves is in have I remembered it rather than more like the public speaking aspect. But are you still nervous about like all of those? Like where do the nerves lie for you?
Definitely the remembering. Definitely. Yeah. I don't have any issue getting up in front of a crowd like at all. Although, you know, to say that in a performative way, not at all. In like a public speaking way, I did just like a little speech thing for work like not that long ago. Basically, I was just talking about one of the programs I work on to a bunch of year 10s, which you would not think would be terrifying. And I was the most nervous I had been in years. And I guess I hadn't really done something like that in a long time. I realized everything, again, I can get up in front of a crowd and perform and MC and all that stuff. Like that's easy. But something about getting up in front of people and just talking about something, I don't know, it completely flipped me. It was weird. Yeah. And I think it took me by surprise as well, which made it worse. I was like, I don't know what I am, and then I'm doing this thing. But yeah, in terms of like comedy and stuff, it's remembering. Like I get so nervous when I'm going to do like a new joke. And that's the main bit that is nervous to me, not whether it's going to go well, it's whether I'm going to remember.
Yeah, I'm the same where it's just like, and especially like some jokes you feel like you're like, okay, this bit connects to this, and like it's like there's like a weird like you're like, fuck, this is like a jumbled up, like in a way like you're like, okay, I have to go from this to this to this.
Yeah.
Like if it's not a story, if it's more like you've written it more like a joke than like a story kind of thing that has like a beginning to end.
Yeah.
Like where do I... after this, I have to say, like, so the remembering part is what fucks me up the most.
Absolutely, yeah. Because then you say it in the wrong order and you fucked up the whole joke.
Yeah. But I guess with, like, comedy compared to, like, theatre, I guess with theatre, if you fuck up, you still have to continue. But at least with, like, comedy, you can be like, haha, I fucked that up. And there's, like...
Absolutely,
there's, like, a bit of, like, you can be honest and straightforward. And that still, like, can be funny in its own way.
And do you know what? That's, like... one thing that I find so less nerve-wracking about comedy. Like, you know, there's obviously, there's a thing that people are like, oh, you do comedy? Like, that's so brave. Like, I could never do that. Like, people say it all the time. I'm like, I don't feel brave. Like, I'm just getting up there and, like, boosting my ego. I'm just talking about myself. Like, what's brave about that, you know? Like,
yeah, it's funny how and it's just like, and it's not like when I started comedy, like, I would, like, spend days being like, fuck, I have to do this in 3 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, like, at work being like, I have to do this tonight. Like, I'm not any less nervous than the average person. It's just that I've forced myself into this situation.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, it's funny, like, my non-comedy friends are just like, you're so brave, and I'm like, I could never do that, and like, and it's just funny hanging out with comedians. Like, we all fucking do this.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Big deal
Yeah, precisely. And yeah, I like that's, you know, in terms of learning a script and doing a play or something like that, where if you like, you're just up there doing your thing. You know what I mean? Like if you're again, like in a play or doing a TV show or something with a script, other people are relying on you to say the right shit. Like, whereas again, on stage, you're just talking, you're just having a convo. Like, it doesn't matter if you mess up. It doesn't, just, you can just go on and you just talk about it, acknowledge it, have fun with it. Like, and it doesn't affect anyone at all, and often it actually can come off quite good, you know, can put you in a spot where you maybe have to be a bit quippy and things like that. So in terms of that kind of thing, I I find that less nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it's funny how we all look at the thing that we don't do as like, I could never do that. Like I have theatre friends that were like, oh, I just like they're like, oh, I just rely on the director or whatever. And I have like this script, and they find like the making jokes about their life, like the opening, like it's a very vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
They see it as like
100%.
like this is what I wrote, and if they don't laugh, they're gonna like. So they find the theatre stuff less intimidating than stand up. They never even try it, even though they're like super funny people.
Yeah.
And I have like an MMA, a friend that's an MMA fighter. He's like, I could never do what you do. I'm like, I couldn't do what you do. It's like, and he's like, oh, I just get punched. I'm like, I just talk. It's so funny how like no matter what,
you could get punched.
Yeah.
If you try.
Well, Angus Gordon used to get punched on stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, we can mix the two together.
You can do anything you put your heart to.
Yeah.
Anything you desire.
Yeah. If you write it in the bit, you can do anything.
You want to be funny, you can be funny. You want to get punched in the face, you can get punched in the face. Ask anyone in the Valley on a Saturday night.
Yeah. Oh, living in Brisbane and like going to gigs in the Valley always reminds me, like, I should learn how to fight. Like it's so scary.
Man, I live still pretty much in the Valley, but I used to live at the Peppers buildings, which are like those big fancy ones. There's like 3 of them basically in the heart of the Valley. I lived there by myself when I was like 25, just wandering around the Valley on my own. I'm like, what the heck? I don't know, man. I used to have balls. Like, Jesus Christ.
You get approached so much in the Valley. It's actually scarier during the day, I find.
It is scarier during the day because you can see everything.
Yeah, and they can see you rather than like, I guess at night, especially on a Saturday, it's like there's so many people, you're not going to get approached as much. But if it's just, it's more, they're going to spot you and be like,
exactly. There's so many girls in like sparkly like sequin dresses. You could just grab one and throw it in front of them and they'll get blinded by like disco ball of dress.
Like pocket sand.
Pocket sequin. Oh, fun. I love Brisbane. It's crazy.
How good's Brisbane?
I love Brisbane. I mean, I've been here like 11 years, I suppose, which still feels so weird. Like where I grew up in South Australia, I was there. We literally moved here a month before I turned 18, like me and my family. So literally had my entire childhood in South Australia and my entire adult life in Brisbane. And I'm just like, I'm so glad that we ended up here. Basically, like my dad just got a job in Brisbane and it was like, okay, we're moving to Brisbane, and didn't really know anything. I'd been here once when I was like 12 or something. Yep. And actually in my brain, I thought like, you know, like the vines at South Bank?
Yeah, yep.
I had in my head as a memory that was Sydney.
Oh.
And so literally we moved here and I was like, whoa, that's also Sydney. That's here.
Sick.
Yeah. And I love Brisbane. I love it so much. It's great.
Have you done any gigs in Adelaide or like South Australia?
I did Rhino Room a couple times when I was there. Oh, it'd have to be a year ago now. Which was fine. It was fine. I thought it would be better, but I think I'd like built up in my head like, oh, South Australia, like I'm back.
Home show.
They're gonna love me. Yeah. And they're like, okay, who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was still a pretty cool experience doing it there. I would love to do a regional tour down through South Australia. And especially back in my hometown, Mount Gambier. I would love to do a show in Mount Gambier because I just know like they'd love it. Like, again, I guess I built that in my head about Adelaide, but no, like small towns, we have so much small town pride in that only we can shit on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we can do it well. So like I have so much gear about my hometown and so much stuff that like a lot of my hometown gear is good because so many people, do come from country towns, and it's all kind of the same situation, right?
Yeah, like like I have no idea where Mount Gambier is, but like your material is something I can relate to because I also grew up in regional.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
And it's such a universal small town experience, really.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Brisbane, everywhere has their Logan, or like everywhere has their like X area that's like they make fun of like inbreeding or something. It's like 30 minutes away.
Yeah, of course. We all know the type. We all know. It's so bogan. But yeah, I would love to do that. Love to go to Mount. I've had a surprising amount of audience members who are either from Mount Gambier or are from the area and know the town. I really didn't expect to have as many as I have had. Like, I'll often ask, like, if anyone's heard of Mount Gambier, and I've had plenty of audience where there's been dead silence, and it's like, like, fair enough. But it's always so nice when happens to be someone from the area. And I actually it was so random. I did a gig, I did a bass gig in the Gold Coast, which I love. I love a Gold Coast gig because I think, again, it's the same thing, like any kind of regional area. Like I've done Toowoomba, I can't remember. And one other of Nick Carr's ones around there. But any like of those small towns, like it just kills. Like that material kills every time. Yeah. And it's kind of the same in the Gold Coast as well. But I did do one in the Gold Coast at the Avenue bar, and there was an entire family right down the front from Mount Gambier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like it was crazy. I was like, are you kidding me? Like what? Like that had never happened. They were quite literally holidaying. And yeah, just happened to come to that one gig that I was on. And it was just awesome.
Yeah, they would have been so like, good. Whoa!
Oh yeah, like they were freaking out and like chatting to me afterwards, like, no way. And it was really, really fun. Yeah. So that was a particularly cool moment. And again, like I've had sprinkles of people here and there and people from the area and a couple of people who are actually from the town around. But yeah, just having that whole family there, I was like, what? Like, I'm sorry, everyone else. I'm just talking to these guys. Yeah. But it kills. Like even when you have sort of that kind of situation, the rest of the crowd kind of gets on board with that, I guess, that story that's happening, you know, this kind of connection that's happening. They can kind of, I don't know, connect with it too.
There is something unique about like seeing crowd interactions like that and then like acknowledging, then it will be acknowledged for the rest of the night on the gig. Like it's totally. It's like, this is happening right now and this isn't like a rehearsed joke. It's like, this is it.
This is real. Yeah, totally.
Like, it's not going to happen again kind of thing. So I think people love that like spontaneous kind of 100% to gigs. Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
Which is nice. It's super nice when that happens. I had another funny one was I had a woman, I think it was a sit down gig. And again, I asked, has anyone heard of Mount Gambier? And this lady, she puts her hand up and she's like, yeah, my daughter's just moved there. And I was like, okay, why? And she goes, she's gone there to open another reject shop.
That's what they need.
Yeah. The key word here is another.
Just competing.
Yeah. I'm like, what? Oh man, that was. I think I left immediately. I was like, I'm done. That's so funny. I cannot beat that. But yeah, apparently they import people in from Queensland to open their reject shops. I don't know, but. It was perfect. Just
like army brats, but reject shop. Yeah. They just like being moved around the country like, I'm sick of this reject shop thing.
Oh man. Yeah, that was awesome. It's like, of course. What else would she be doing? Why else would you move to Mount Gambier?
Yeah, you wouldn't do it for Crazy Clarks.
No, you would not. We used to have, I remember, just thinking back, now we're reminiscing. We used to have like one of those cheapest chips. Did you guys have cheapest chips here?
Not that I know of. Not in Mackay.
I reckon we had like two like dollar stores for every person in the town. Like, but remember we had this massive like dollar store called Cheap as Chips, and it was like massive, like a warehouse, and it was completely blue, and then it just had this massive like crinkle cut chip character above the door. And it lives in my dreams. Like, that is my sleep paralysis demon at all times. And I'm just imagining like someone moving to Mount Gambier to open another Cheap as Chips, just like the actual chip man.
Do that.
Yeah, me?
Yeah.
Yes. I'll get like a foam suit of the chip man.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what the dreams have been about. Is
Yes.
that's your goal. Yeah.
It's horrifying. Please help.
But you should do a regional tour though. Like,
I would love to.
I can imagine it's all across Australia be the same thing where regional towns don't get comedy.
100%.
So like they rock up in droves. Like they're so like they'll pack a room out.
Oh yeah.
If you like advertise it right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's again like the ones that Nick Carr does around Toowoomba and all those kind of places. Like they pack out because there's something happening. And like you go to those towns and nothing's open. Everything is closed except for like this that's happening on this night. Yeah. And so of course like the whole town's there. And they're so fun. They are so much fun. Everyone's just happy to be out and about. Yeah, I would really love to. I got really inspired when Georgina Humphreys did her little tour up the top of Queensland and all that. Like that just looked so much fun and was such a great idea, just putting on these shows for people. Because again, I guess that kind of all comes back to, you know, it's not even about making money for me if I were to do something like that. It's just about having a good time and connecting with people. And like, again, I guess coming back to kind of my artistic journey, I suppose, through wanting to be a performer and then kind of finding this love of like helping people create stuff and enjoy arts and put on things. And like now my day job, like I work in arts funding, you know, it's all kind of just connected in that way. Like I just love bringing the arts to the world and to Australia. And I guess as well, like growing up in a small town, I went to these Eisteddfords and I did all these like as much arts and drama and things that I could, but there just wasn't like, there really wasn't anything. Like there wasn't a drama class that I could really do. It was a couple of like little youth arty groups that I was a part of. Like I would just grab onto anything I could. We had like a company come and do a musical once. Like, you know, these were just like...
Yeah, I had a very similar experience.
Yeah, it's just like these little bits that I could get. And I think that probably all kind of fed into that, even subconsciously, of me just being like, I just want to, I want to make art happen for people that it's not always accessible to. And whether that even is just, putting on a show and inspiring people and having a good time, letting people have a good night out, you know, like it's all the same. And I think that's how we enrich the world, man. That's how we enrich the world.
And it's even like that, you know, one kid could see it and then be like, that's the fucking thing I want to do. Like
100%.
And that's such a, probably more of a common thing than you'd think, is like it kicks something off and like, especially like something they've never experienced before.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, again, like going back to that small town, like someone coming from that town and growing up there and then, you know, I guess I come to the big city doing comedy and then coming back and being like, no, this is literally where I grew up. Like I grew up here and now this is my life. That's super inspiring. Like I remember that was so inspiring for me as a kid. If you ever learnt that someone came from even just the area or even just like South Australia, you know, I'd be like, oh, cool. They're like, they're like me. I could do it too. But yeah, and especially those regional towns, like we were like 5 hours from pretty much a 5-hour drive from Adelaide or Melbourne. So we were very isolated. And there's a lot isolated in terms of big cities. So it wasn't like you could just, there's a lot of like little towns around, but it wasn't like you could just do a day trip to you know, one of the major cities to do something like that. And, you know, sometimes we did. Like, I had very supportive parents, which helped, obviously, everything. And I really appreciate so much. They did so much for me. And honestly, sometimes we would do like a night trip to Melbourne to go and see something that I wanted to see, because they were, you know, they knew there wasn't much happening where we were living, and really did foster that creativity in me, which is just wonderful. But yeah, it's obviously wasn't something that we could do all the time at all, really. So yeah, it's just, I think, yeah, important to kind of keep up that energy and inspiration, I suppose, and bring things to the towns so that, you know, you don't have to travel 5 hours to see one show. Yeah. You know, because yeah, that's pretty much what we did. But yeah, because comedy can be, as you said earlier, like comedy can be seen as like this like crazy thing. It's like, how do I even get into that? Like, what is this? Like for me, like listening to podcasts was how like it was like someone talking about how they like started doing open mics. So I was like, you can just get up and do it kind of thing. Yeah. Obviously, like in Mackay, there was nothing like that. Well, I guess that's the same as Mount Gambier, yeah.
Yeah. But it was like a bucket list thing. It was like, I'll just try it once type thing.
Totally. And I think that's where, like, in my head, it didn't feel like a real thing. You know, again, like I could be, we had a theatre, you know, so I could be in plays and I could be an actress, and that's something I can dream about, you know. Like, I guess I had, as a kid, visual pathways of getting to kind of that goal, whereas I don't think we ever had like an open, maybe now, but growing up, like I don't think we ever had comedy. I mean, we had, you know, occasionally, if we were lucky, maybe a comedian would come and do like a show at the theatre if they were doing something like that. But there was no open mics. There was not a scene. So that felt like kind of an impossible thing, and not even something that I had even really thought about how to do, I suppose. Yeah.
So now, so you run a room?
Yes.
So do you want to, for our listeners, I guess, describe what a room is?
Yeah.
Yes, a comedy room.
It's a big open space. I guess, well, a comedy room is essentially, it's a show. Ours is monthly. We don't do open mic at the moment. We have talked about potentially doing an open mic at some stage, but ours is curated at the moment. And it's a female queer show called Not a Boys Club, which is awesome. And yeah, we basically have normally 5 to 6 acts we do it monthly, every month, and obviously an MC. And I mean, every room is different, but we like to do something a little fun. Like every act will do like about 7 minutes. And then at the very end of the show, we play a game of truth or dare, which we have the audience writing down like their little truth or dares throughout the show. And then obviously read them out to the audience, and get the comedians to do all the fun stuff. Yeah,
your shows, like by what I've seen, get pretty wild at times.
They get so wild. They get unhinged, and it's so fun, and we get in trouble every time. We did like our first one, so we're at Good Chat, and we're still planning on doing a few like little cheeky special Friday night shows there every now and then. But the Wickham have been poaching us for a long time. So now they've got all their renovations up. We've moved over to the Wickham, which is awesome. And we did our first one there. And there's like, where they've got the stage set up, there's a window.
Yeah.
A window right behind. And one of the dares was for Rebel, our beautiful headliner for the night, to moon the people outside from the window, which of course she very graciously did. And we had a video of it, and basically they like messaged us and they were like, can you please take that down from your Instagram immediately? And we're like, fine if you hate fun. Sorry. Please have us back. It's just especially funny since they'd been, again, like trying to get us to have the show there for such a long time.
Yeah.
And then the first time we do, they're like, fuck, what have we done? But it's so fun. It's so fun. We've also noticed we've got quite a really nice returning audience now, which is awesome. A bit of a following, which is great. But I've noticed it's been really interesting because I've noticed over the time that we've done it, how the, I guess, truth or dares have evolved. Like you can see that there's, I mean, we do know now that we have like a bit of a following, but you can see that I almost think people are like pushing it a little bit further.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And like at first it was like, because I'll go through them because, you know, you get a lot. There'll be like half of them will be like, do a shot or make out with someone in the crowd. I'm like, boring. No, we want the spicy stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll like go through them and vet them and pick out all the good ones and sort of, you know, arrange them in a, because you need like a little, you need it arranged, you know, you need like the best one at the end, and rather than just picking out random ones, it wouldn't work, because we did do that at one point and it didn't work. Yeah, and it's so interesting just going through them now, and you just take out all the crap ones, and some of them you're like, you have been here before, like this. Yep. You know how far we will go.
and if they're monthly, if they're like regulars, they probably like spend a month thinking of shit to write.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
I'm
sure they do.
This is going to be good. They're at work. They're like, this is going to be a banger.
Yeah. I'm sure they do. Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun. That Wickham one was awesome. We completely packed out that room, and we did it for free. Actually, the Wickham's been great because they're, like, especially for the first one, they were like, look, we want this to be free. You know, they paid us for our overheads and everything. It was amazing. So we put on that as our first one as a celebration. It was free, and it was absolutely packed to the rafters, people everywhere. It was so humbling and awesome. And yeah, it got messy, but it's so much fun. I love it. Yeah, it does take, it takes way more planning to organize a room than I think, well, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
And I think people don't realize, because I think in your head you're like, oh, you just pick people. It's so not like that. It's
you also have to like correspond with the venue and organize all the, as you said, overhead, MC, like there'd be a lot of like costs and things like that to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, advertising, like Kiara, who is obviously, I run it with Kiara, and she is basically like, she's in marketing and stuff, so she's amazing at our marketing. Like oh man, like our Instagram just looks delicious every time. I love it. I love how it all looks. So she's like really great at that, and I'm so glad, because I'm just trash. I'm trash at social media. Like, oh man, I just don't have the time or the brain space. So that's good. But yeah, even just like booking artists feels like a mission every month. People are just so busy. People are so busy. Like booking an MC and a headliner. Oh man, I'll go through like 5 people until I finally find someone who is available on that particular night. But yeah, that's just how it is. That's just how it is. Like we've gotten really lucky too, and so many people who have been on our show, or you know, have heard of us or whatever. Like we're really starting to get the word out. Like there's been people who I've messaged to, you know, MC or something, kind of even in my head maybe taking a bit of a punt and going like, would you be interested? And they like, oh my God, absolutely. Like I've heard about you guys. You guys look so much fun. I'm super keen. So that's awesome. A big win for me, actually. We had Steph Tisdale MC, and she was kind of she was pretty busy as well, had a lot going on, and again that was one of those moments that I was like, I'll just take a chance, I'll just ask. And yeah, she was like, absolutely, and has raved about it ever since, and I just appreciate that so much. Like, yeah, that was big. That was big in my heart. I was like, oh my God, like this is someone that I used to like. Steph is, you know, one of these people that I used to watch on TV back when I had that headspace of, oh my God, comedians are amazing, and that's not, you know, a goal for me. You know, that's not achievable for me. I don't know how people do that. So that felt like a very big full circle kind of life moment where it was like, whoa, like if you told me 5 years ago that Steph Tisdale would be emceeing my comedy show, like, no way. I would have been like, okay, whatever, idiot, like, sure. Yeah, but it's so fun. It's so fun. It's worth the work. It's worth the hard work. I really do commend people who run like weekly rooms and things like that, especially when they're comedians on top of that. Like, oh man, I don't know how they do it.
I don't know. Yeah, that seems like because I've considered, but I'm like, I can't just throw that on top of what
it is another job. Like, it is another job. It really is. Like, I have to discipline myself in, I guess, finding that work time for Not a Boys Club. After, I mean, like I work like I'm a 9 to 5 galley. Which is fine. I love my job. I love my job a lot, which is really great. But it still means that, you know, I'll clock off from that job and be like, okay,
now
on to another job, you know, and that's in between doing gigs and things as well. It does take a toll. But I mean, it's all, you just gotta find that balance. You really gotta find that balance. I really try not to do that work on weekends. Like it's one of those things that you do have to, again, treat as work and be like, no, this is a job, you know, and that also means making sure that you are taking time as well and not doing it. So I did have to kind of restrict myself and go, no, you need weekends. Like, you work Monday to Friday, you need weekends. Weekends are not working time. Weekends are not time on your computer looking at screens, you know, and then, dedicating like a couple of nights a week after work to work on Not a Boy Club stuff. Which again, it's crazy because we do one show a month, you know. I truly don't know how people do it who do weekly or more so shows. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it. Oh, it's the best time. Like, but I get so stressed. I get so stressed about it, and then it'll happen, and you'll be there. And I run the sound as well, which is really fun because I'll often have a microphone myself, and it almost feels a little bit like like talk shows, like how the DJ or whatever will have their own mic and like butt in every now and then. I'm like, that's me. That's what I do. Anyway, it'll be like. That'll be happening, and I'll have that moment where I'm like, oh, this is the best. This is the best feeling. And I think there's like, you know, when you crush a gig, that's like cloud 9, best feeling in the world. When your own gig that you run crushes, that's another level, man. That is another level.
And you have that moment where, Steph Tisdale and people like that are on.
Yeah.
And you got to have them on your gig, but then you also get to see them interact with the other, like, you see other, like, probably newer comedians, then also meet those people that they would be looking up to.
100%. And and then again, having, you know, it's great having the audience come up and say like that they loved it and all that stuff. And again, seeing those reoccurring people who obviously enjoy what we do. But for me, when the comedians come up and say, this was so much fun, like you put on a great room, thank you for having me. That's the thing for me, because you know, what's the point? What's the point in having a show if your performers aren't enjoying themselves? Yeah. Like, I think that truly is most important, is that they're enjoying it. Because if they're enjoying themselves, the audience are going to enjoy themselves anyway.
Yeah, it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
When you can see people having fun, it's
absolutely.
like, it is, crowd can tell.
Exactly. And it's infectious. It's infectious. So yeah, that's truly, feels so good, man. It feels so good. Like, yum, yum, yum. Feed me. Yeah, but we have so much fun.
Is there another show coming up for Not a Boys Club?
Yeah. So our next one will be July 3rd at the Wickham. Again, which will be really fun. It's on a Monday. We started doing... So when we were at Good Chat, we were on Mondays, and they actually moved us to Friday nights, the late slot, which amazing, like truly very, very cool for them to recognize, something that we do, obviously, again, as a female and queer focused show, and for us to start on that, early weekday slot, and then for them to go, actually, we want you in a prime time, which is amazing.
Yeah.
However, we did realize that because we had already built up this regular audience, people who come to a show on a Monday are not the people who can come to a show on a Friday.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, they're not. They're hospo workers. Like, they're people who Monday is their weekend. So that was really interesting because it did end up being a little bit more of a struggle to fill those seats when we had kind of anticipated it to be easier.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's like you'd think Friday easy.
Yeah.
But and it's also I think it also speaks to how well you've built up this audience and crowd that on a Monday night people
absolutely
are ready to get wild and come out. So
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, it truly is. It is. So yeah, and that I think it kind of worked out well though then, because we were like, well, Wickham wants us. They would prefer us on a Monday anyway, because they're a bar rather than a club, so they're trying to get people into their place on those early weekdays. Yeah, so it kind of is really nice now because we can have these shows at the Wickham on the Monday for that nice audience that we've curated, and then we can also have our occasional Friday night extravaganza, big bash show as well, and that's a really nice little balance there. And I think it did show, because we had this Friday night show at Good Chat that, again, we struggled more than we thought we would to fill the seats. And then we did this show at the Wickham on a Monday and packed it out, probably double the audience we've ever had, because, it was a bigger room than we've ever had as well. And I just, I couldn't believe it. On a Monday night. It was crazy. But yeah, next one, also on a Monday night, 3rd of July.
Actually, seeing how you've built a crowd, I've seen people that I know, not through comedy, go to your shows as well. And
really?
It makes me really stoked. I'm like, that's fucking sick.
That's sick.
Just to see friends go to comedy, but also the local stuff. It's
yeah, absolutely. It's great. Yeah. I think that's important. Again, build up the local people, build up the people who are doing cool stuff. I guess as well, we kind of like to do a little bit of not a cabaret type thing, but we've had cabaret type acts on before, and acts that aren't the type of things that you would see on comedy lineups at all. Like Rebel, who mooned the wall. She's not really a comedian in that she's a comedian, but I guess she'd probably call herself more as a theatre maker. But she basically still did comedy and did this set, and it was hilarious and so funny, and you would call it stand-up. But I guess a normal stand-up room isn't where she feels like she belongs. So I think it's really nice that we have this kind of crossover there, where it's not a variety show. I wouldn't say that at all. But it kind of fosters a place for that little bit more of the maybe left of field comedian creative people, and gives them a little bit more of a what's the opposite of main stage? A local level, I suppose. That exposure, I guess, in terms of as a comedian. I think that's one thing about comedy that's great, is that you do get this stage time several times a week, and exposure, but it is exposure on a level that you don't really get with many other art forms. I suppose like music you do, because you can book a few gigs and things like that, but it still takes a lot more planning. Whereas like with comedy, you can get up anywhere. You can get up anywhere and do 5-10 minutes of material at any time. Like as a performer, it doesn't take the vigorous planning, I suppose, like the short-term planning. It doesn't take that it does for a lot of other things. Like if you were to do acting or something like that, if you were to do theatre, you build up all of this for 6 months. You'll build up, working on something for a week-long show, and then it's over.
Yeah.
And you're done and you never do that again. You know what I mean?
You have to learn the next thing.
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit the same again with those crossover kind of cabaret, more type performers. They're a little bit more waiting for those bigger shows and those variety shows and those things like that. So I do think it's cool to kind of bring in those to something that's a little bit more regular and grassroots kind of situation to just get people to hear these people and get their names in their heads and all that kind of stuff. Or again, even if they're not even at that level of going to these variety shows and doing things like that, like if you got something kooky and funny and whatever, like hit us up, let us know, show us your stuff. Like we're always looking for new people, always. And the weirder and the more wonderful, the better. Like, please, we love weird and wonderful.
So we're, I guess, wrapping things up now. Where can people find you?
Socials, Instagram, always, BEE_Cordez with a Z, because my real name is spelled with an S, but everyone says Cords. So I did change my stage name to a Z, and when I tell you that changed the pronunciation instantly. I have never had someone like say Cords with a Z on the end.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm like, yes. B_Cordez on Instagram. You can also check out Not a Boys Club, also on Instagram. It's just Not a Boys Club comedy. And I don't know, TikTok.
Yeah.
Bees knees. It's like BS_NEES. If you want to. I haven't posted anything in years. That was like such a COVID time for me. I was just like in a house, like, what do I do? And then as soon as the world opened up, I forgot it existed. But yeah, apart from that, again, we got shows. I'm just around always. Not a Boys Club again, start of July. I'm doing a women's gig that Anissa Nandala runs next Friday, coming Friday, which will be really, really cool. I don't remember where it is, but look her up. I'm sure you'll find it. And I mean, that's all I can think of right now. I'm sure there's plenty of things coming. Oh man, you're lucky if I think of what's happening like 2 days from now. I don't know. I just look at my diary. I'm like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, cool. I guess I'm going to this thing tonight.
Cool. I'll be there. Yeah, that's me, really.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Cheers.